Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, Episode 274, The Golden Road to the Future. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I'll continue with who we are and what we do. Here, I look at how our activities define us and how impermanence and non-self might affect all this. Then it's on to the golden road to the future. Here I look at what we aspire to be and how we shape our future and how the future might shape us. Today's show will feature background footage from Bearwallow Mountain. Bearwallow Mountain is located just south of Gerton, North Carolina. To get there, well, from Asheville, you would take Highway 74A east. You would go over the Continental Divide, entering Henderson County. Maybe about a mile after that, maybe even less, you take a right onto Bearwallow Mountain Road. This is just before the fire department. So if you pass the fire department, turn around. Anyway, you go up Bearwallow Mountain Road. It turns into a dirt road. Then, as you crest the ridge, it turns into a paved road again. Right then, right when the dirt road changes into a paved road at the ridge, that's where you park. The trailhead is off to the left, going up Bearwallow Mountain. You would go through the gate, or along the side of the gate that goes along a dirt road. The trail's just to the right of this. They have a display sign that has information about Bearwallow Mountain. Anyway, so you'll see the display sign, and so you'll know the trail is up there. Well, this hike, which I did yesterday on the 22nd of February, well, it was a little icy. We had a big ice storm last Monday, 6 days prior to the hike, and some cold weather and a little bit of snow since. Well, Sunday got up into the 50s, so it was decent temperature-wise. However, the trail conditions were pretty bad. First, it started off all muddy. Then, there were portions where it was icy. In fact, I had to crawl on my hands and knees about 20 feet or so, even placing the camera in the snow briefly. Well, I was afraid I was going to fall, and I didn't want to take the camera down with me. Even though I was crawling, I still was afraid I was going to slide off and fall. But luckily I didn't. I got the camera, brushed off the ice and snow and water, and moved on. Then on the way back, I went around a large boulder, and I was able to detour this icy portion of the trail. But of course, going off trail wasn't much better. It was still a little muddy and icy. However, it was all worth it. Once I got to the top, wasn't much snow in the fields, and of course, glorious views. So, now let's continue with who we are and what we do. For the center of everything is our motivation and our compassion. Things like that. Sure, That is what is eternal. That's what lasts forever, is things like morals and values, and what motivates us. Things could change. That is, we could adopt to a new situation in eternity and still have the same morals and motivations. But we certainly can't bring our wealth with us, or our health, or our social status, and so on. Things will probably change in heaven. There might be some things that don't. Some things may stay the same. For instance, if we're popular here on earth, we might luck out and be popular in heaven, or whatever the next existence is. Why would such a phenomenon occur? Well, it would fall back to our motivations and our values. If people happen to like you because of your motivations and values, gee, that's a good sign. Lucky you. So, that could set the stage for the next existence, for people to like you then too, because they like your motivations and values, because that's what is eternal. So if you went through a series of existences, or you went to heaven, and were in heaven for eternity, well, perhaps for eternity you will be appreciated for your morals and values. Conversely, if your morals and values aren't quite right, and because of that you don't have a lot of friends, well, you might suffer, not only in this existence, but perhaps in this next existence too, whatever that might be. So, it's important to resolve this in your present life, to set the stage for things to be better in the future, whether it's heaven, hell, reincarnation, etc. Or if the future is absolutely nothing, if we die and we turn into nothingness, and that's that, well, you would have a better history, and you would have a better legacy, and that's all that would be left of you. If you can't reincarnate or go to heaven or hell or something like that, all that remains is your history. So go out with a bang. Go out looking good. Try to improve your morals and attitudes and motivations and so on, so that you get more friends. With that means more people appreciate you because of your morality. You'll see more people appreciate you because of your compassion. More people appreciate you because of your loving nature. Conversely, if you're greedy, or you're full of spite, or you're narrow minded, well, people might appreciate you less. And you'll just have to deal with that. So, try to adapt a better attitude. If you're deceitful, people might appreciate you less. And so on and so on. So, we have to see beyond our activities and realize that it's all impermanent, and that the only thing that really matters is our morals, our motivations, our compassion, our loving attitude, how deceitful or truthful we are, things like that. That's what's eternal. And that's what carries us on to the next existence, if there is one. I think there is. And so let's get ready for it. Assume that there is. Best be prepared. You betcha. And so just do that. Adopt a better attitude, and it will go a long way. Anyway, so you have to see beyond the activity. But you also have to adapt to new activities, which might be easier than you think. It might be easier to learn something, easier to adapt, even easier to enjoy something you thought you wouldn't if you just try. Especially if you moved to a new town or you have a bunch of new friends. Adapt to them. At least try. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. You still have your old friends, I guess, and you could do whatever activities by yourself, I guess. Try to make things work out for the best. Don't conform to, well, to non-moralistic, or not non-moralistic, but don't conform to situations that might compromise your morality and that might cause you to be more deceitful or more cruel. If you have a bunch of new cruel friends, well, maybe you need different friends. If your new friends are deceitful, well, try to move on to a new situation where you would have less deceitful friends. Associate with people who have similar morality to you, and that will make things easier. Sure, but be ready to adopt to new activities as we move along in life with who we are and what we do. I hope you have enjoyed this section of the Casey Waters Show. Now, let's look at how impermanence and non-self affects who we are and what we do. Impermanence is all around us. So, we just have to deal with it. We are going to die. All of our family and friends and loved ones, they too will die. And all our possessions will eventually deteriorate and decompose. Nothing lasts forever. Everything decays eventually. Even the mightiest of mountains eventually crumble. So, what does this all mean? Well, what it means is with this impermanence, we shouldn't put too much stake in our activities. We shouldn't stress it as being so darn important. For it all will disappear and be replaced by something else. So we just got to be ready to adopt to new activities, because our old ones, well, they might not be around for our whole life. And even if they are, our taste might change. So we just got to remember, nothing lasts forever. And, well, that affects a lot of things. It also affects how we see ourselves. Sure, if you accept impermanence, then you have to accept non-self. Doesn't seem like it's necessarily true at first. But if you really think about it, it is. There's no permanent self. We are impermanent. So, we have to accept that. I guess our soul is permanent, but our soul, who knows what might happen after death? We may go to heaven, or perhaps we'll be reincarnated. Even if we are reincarnated, it's best to assume this is our only existence, and we only got one chance to get things right. We have to adopt the correct attitude. That's the most important thing. So, we have to realize everything's impermanent. And we have to realize that there's non-self too. That even our self is not permanent. So, Perhaps our aspirations might be carried out by someone else in the future, but not necessarily by us. Perhaps we'll die before we could accomplish our mission. Sure, but our mission might be accomplished by someone else in the future, especially if it has to do with things like attitude, compassion, and love, and whatnot. Those things go through the generations, where a family business venture might fail after a few generations. Anyway, we have to realize that there is non-self, and therefore we shouldn't place such a great emphasis on ourself and on our accomplishments. We should just be able to get by as best we can and hope that there's a better existence in the future. And because of impermanence and non-self, that places less importance on wealth and health and social status, education, and so on. These are less important because they too will disappear. So, now, let's move along to the golden road, to the future. So here, I look at how our aspirations shape our future, and how the future might change us. So, we have to realize that we do have a hand in determining our future. We have to aspire to do the right things and set up ourselves for a better situation. We have to be practical and realize there might be stumbling blocks and delays. So we have to have practical goals. And even if we do have impractical goals, which sometimes is a good idea, because sometimes we could do a lot more than we think we can, well, we just have to always be prepared for defeat and failure. But use failure as an opportunity to learn, using that learning to do things better in the future, whether doing the same activity with a better approach, which might yield better results, or perhaps breaking off into something new. Anyway, we have to set good goals and have our goals not be based on ephemeral things such as wealth, but have our goals based on more important things such as knowing the right people who care about us, instead of knowing the right people who care about how much money we have, or how popular we are, or how good looking we are. No, it's relating with each other, one-on-one, that's the most important. So, that's how you should determine your friends, by finding people you can relate with. Anyway, so we have to realize that we have to shape our future by using our goals and aspirations. But our life might have been determined in advance by us and God in the brain room. If this is the case, we might get what we want anyway, providing we play our cards right. This is an important concept, so I need to expand upon it. Plus, a lot of you probably don't know what the brain room is anyway. So, let's go back to the brain room. It's dark in the brain room, poorly lit. A few fish tanks, maybe 2 or 3, brightly neon colored, with the background behind the fish. And even the fish themselves are kind of brightly colored. Every once in a while, a door will open into a bright white hallway, and someone will come out, usually dressed in white, perhaps a nurse, and they'll come get us. But in the meantime, before we could go anywhere, we gotta figure out our next existence, and we have to figure that out with God. We don't decide our next existence. God does. And we do. We do it together. A cooperative venture. We kind of negotiate with God before we are born. We figure out between the two of us what we need to learn and the best ways to learn it. We set up our life for that. We set up our life so we could advance our goals. And our goals particularly in regard to morals, values, motivation, compassion, and the like. Sure, we have to set up our life so our goals will be met, or at least so we will learn from it. The learning is actually more important than the goals being met. If we learn really well, we can easily obtain our goals in the next life, if not in this one. But it's the learning process that's important. We gotta know what to do and why to do it. And it has to come easily and instinctively for us, instead of us always having to ask someone else. Sure, God is with us, and God and us, we can figure out what to do at any time of our life. But before we are born, this is where the intensive negotiation occurs, where we really figure out with God what our life is going to be like, what we can get, and what we must give up. You can't get everything you want, and there always has to be some suffering, but you can learn from the suffering. But life is not suffering. It is a mission. Anyway, so since you're negotiating with God your future existence, in theory you get what you want anyway, especially if you play your cards right, using the right attitude, motivations, and values, having love and compassion and empathy. So, instead of life being suffering, no, life is not suffering. Well, it is. There's always suffering in life. But we have to look beyond the suffering, because life is really a mission. And it's the mission that God and us determined what the mission is. The mission was determined before we were born in the brain room. We negotiated with God. Of course, we probably forgot what our life's mission is, but that's okay. We just gotta press on anyway and realize that there is a mission, a purpose in there, a purpose to learn, a purpose to grow, a purpose to develop, to be a better person, to be a person with more compassion and love and understanding and tolerance for diverse people and diverse situations. Anyway, so you're lucky to be part of this mission in life. Sure, because you're actually accomplishing something you believe in, and that helps other people too. Sure. Also, sometimes things will improve as you get older. You don't always realize this, but sometimes it happens, especially if you do the right things. Perhaps by altering your medication regime, taking less medicine, perhaps exercising more, and perhaps other changes. My mom, through taking less medication and moving to a different environment, well, she doesn't use her walker anymore. It gathers dust. Gee, she hasn't used it, 7 years or 6 years? Something like that. And she's almost 90. Before, for a couple of years in her mid 80s, she would need it if she went over, let's say, 100 yards. So, we have to realize that we are part of a mission. We are part of something greater. And we need to figure it out so we can help God. We're on a mission to help God. And God is on a mission to help us. But we have to work on this together. However, the future might change us, might have an impact on our life, and it might not necessarily be a positive one. So we have to be ready to counteract it. So, what am I referring to? Well, we all have smartphones. And in the future, our smartphones are going to look pretty dumb. The smartphones of the future are going to be able to do much, much more. And are probably going to be much more Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, CaseyWaters2 at CaseyWaters.com.